Welcome back to NBC Dual Channel. Today, we will learn about the issue that has Salem residents on edge as Brady Black faces one of the most challenging moments of his parenting journey when his daughter Rachel spirals into a crisis that threatens multiple lives. The upcoming Monday, -124 episode of Days of Our Lives promises to deliver heart-stopping drama as the consequences of a young girl's jealous scheme unfold in ways nobody could have anticipated. Sarah's life-threatening crisis. The tension reaches its peak at the local pub, where what should have been a pleasant dessert outing transforms into a medical nightmare. Sarah Horton Kiriakis finds herself in grave danger after consuming pistachio ice cream that Rachel deliberately placed in her cone, knowing full well about Sarah's severe allergy to the nut. The scene unfolds with devastating speed as Sarah takes that fateful bite, unaware that the innocent-looking treat contains a potentially lethal ingredient. Rachel's plan, born from jealousy and fear of losing her father's attention to Sarah, backfires in the most terrifying way imaginable. Within moments of ingestion, Sarah begins displaying alarming symptoms of anaphylaxis. Her breathing becomes labored and restricted, her body reacting violently to the allergen coursing through her system. The color drains from her face as the allergic reaction takes hold with frightening intensity. Brady watches in horror as the woman he has grown close to struggles for each breath, the reality of the situation hitting him with devastating force. The pub atmosphere shifts from casual and relaxed to panic emergency as other patrons recognize the severity of Sarah's condition. Rachel's desperate last-minute intervention. In a twist that reveals the complexity of Rachel's character, the young girl experiences a sudden change of heart at the critical moment. Perhaps hearing the story of the baby switch kidnapping triggered something within her conscience, or maybe the reality of what she was about to do finally penetrated her jealous rage. Whatever the reason, Rachel makes a frantic attempt to stop Sarah from eating the contaminated ice cream, but her warning comes tragically late. Sarah has already taken a bite before Rachel can intervene, setting in motion a chain of events that cannot be undone. The desperation in Rachel's voice as she tries to prevent the disaster speaks to the internal conflict raging within this troubled child who has been manipulating situations far beyond her emotional maturity to handle. The traumatic memory resurfaces. Witnessing Sarah's agonizing reaction proves to be the catalyst that unlocks a memory Rachel has been suppressing for months. As Sarah gasps for air and clutches at her throat, something clicks in Rachel's traumatized mind, and suddenly she remembers the night she shot E.J. DiMera. The blocked memory comes flooding back with crystal clarity, the anger she felt upon discovering E.J. had kidnapped her grandmother, the weight of the gun in her small hands, the deafening sound of the shot, and the horror of seeing E.J. fall. The psychological walls she built to protect herself from this terrible truth come crashing down all at once. Rachel's world shatters as she realizes she has been carrying this dark secret, buried so deep that even she couldn't access it until this triggering moment. The parallels between E.J.'s suffering and Sarah's current distress force Rachel to confront what she has done in both situations. Brady's furious confrontation. Brady Black's anger knows no bounds when he realizes what Rachel has done to Sarah. His interrogation of his daughter is fierce and uncompromising as he demands answers about why she would commit such a dangerous act. The betrayal cuts deep. Not only has Rachel endangered an innocent woman's life, but she has also violated Brady's trust in ways he never imagined possible. His voice shakes with rage and disbelief as he questions how his little girl could be capable of such calculated cruelty. The father who has always defended and protected his daughter now finds himself staring at a stranger, someone whose actions he cannot comprehend or excuse. However, Brady's fury transforms into profound concern when Rachel's emotional dam breaks completely. As she melts down and confesses to shooting E.J., Brady realizes his daughter is in the grip of severe psychological trauma that has been festering untreated. The anger drains from his face, replaced by fear for Rachel's mental state and worrying about the legal and emotional consequences she now faces. He understands in that moment that his daughter needs help far beyond anything he can provide alone. Kristen's sacrifice revealed. The confession also reveals that Kristen DiMera has been taking the blame for E.J.'s shooting to protect her daughter. This maternal sacrifice adds another layer of complexity to an already tangled situation. Kristen, despite her many flaws and schemes over the years, chose to shoulder the guilt for a crime she didn't commit rather than see Rachel face prosecution. Brady now must grapple with the knowledge that Kristen has been sitting in custody, allowing everyone to believe she was the shooter, all to shield their child from the consequences of her actions. The revelation forces Brady to reassess everything he thought he knew about the situation and raises difficult questions about what comes next. Sarah's recovery and Rachel's long road ahead. Fortunately, spoilers confirm that Sarah will survive this terrifying ordeal. Whether through emergency medical intervention with an EpiPen, rushed hospital treatment, or a combination of both, the doctors managed to reverse the allergic reaction and stabilize her condition. Sarah's recovery, however, does little to ease the burden of what has transpired. The psychological scars from being deliberately poisoned by a child she was trying to befriend may take much longer to heal than the physical symptoms. For Rachel, survival of her victim offers little comfort. The young girl now faces a mountain of trauma that will require extensive therapy and support to overcome. She must process the guilt of shooting EJ, the reality that her mother took the fall for her crime, the shame of trying to harm Sarah, and the fear of what consequences await her. Child psychologists will likely need to work intensively with Rachel to help her understand her actions, develop healthy coping mechanisms, and prevent future dangerous behavior. The path to recovery will be long and painful, requiring commitment from both Brady and Kristen to prioritize their daughter's mental health above all else. The fallout from this day will ripple through Salem for months to come, affecting relationships, legal proceedings, and the fundamental trust between parents and children. Brady must now navigate the impossible terrain of loving his daughter while holding her accountable, supporting her healing while ensuring justice is served, and rebuilding his own life while dedicating himself to Rachel's recovery. Monday's episode marks not an ending, but the beginning of a challenging journey for the entire Black family as they confront the darkest consequences of secrets, lies, and untreated childhood trauma. Part 2. Rachel puts Sarah in danger, old wounds reopen, and Kayla begins asking questions. A dramatic Friday in Salem. Friday, November 21, 2025. It was an eventful and emotional day in Salem, filled with danger, suspicion, painful memories, and the kind of heartfelt conversations that only emerge during the holidays. On today's episode of Days of Our Lives, Rachel's impulsive actions put Sarah's life at risk. Ari learns difficult truths about her family's past. Aaron reaches an emotional breaking point over Sophia, and Kayla grows increasingly suspicious of EJ's mysterious laboratory. In many ways, this episode reminded longtime viewers that the heart of the series has always been about family, forgiveness, and the complicated ways that history shapes the present. Trouble at the DeMera mansion. Susan confronts EJ, and doubts begin to rise. The morning begins at the DeMera mansion, where Susan is unusually restless. She arrives expecting a routine conversation with her son, only to run into a wall the moment she asks EJ to check on Marlena's condition. His refusal is abrupt, almost defensive, and it immediately triggers her motherly instincts. Over the years, Susan has learned one unmistakable truth. Whenever EJ dodges a question, he is hiding something. When she presses him, EJ finally lets some truth slip out. He admits that Marlena's diagnosis may have been mishandled because the staff at the lab was overwhelmed. At first, he tries to frame it as a simple oversight, but Susan sharply calls him out. She accuses him of being too stingy with resources and warns him that cutting corners, especially when it comes to medical care, always comes back to haunt the DeMera family. The confrontation doesn't end there. EJ, clearly irritated, shifts the conversation and asks Susan to use her psychic gut feeling to locate Kristen and Tony. But for once, she cannot sense them at all. The mansion feels strange to her, heavier, darker, filled with an old kind of dread she knows all too well. It is then that Susan finally says it aloud. Stefano's evil is still here. It lingers in every corner of this house. Her words stop EJ cold. He tries to laugh it off, but he cannot hide the fear that flickers across his face. Susan raises her finger at him, the same scolding gesture she used when he was a mischievous little boy, and warns him that secrets have a way of coming to light, especially in Salem. Thanksgiving preparations turn emotional for Aaron. In another part of town, Aaron tries to focus on Thanksgiving plans with Mark. They sit together at a kitchen counter, staring at a frozen turkey that seems determined not to thaw. But their conversation quickly turns from holiday logistics to something far more personal. Aaron confesses that he cannot stop thinking about his son, the little boy he gave up for adoption. He knows in his heart that it was the right decision at the time, but that knowledge doesn't make the longing any easier. Holidays, especially Thanksgiving, have a way of opening old wounds. This year, the empty seat at the dinner table feels even more painful. Aaron admits he is struggling. He feels guilt, grief, and an overwhelming sense of distance from Sophia, the young woman who is now at the center of his emotional storm. He misses her comfort. He misses her companionship. And he cannot shake the feeling that something is seriously wrong in her life. Mark listens patiently. As always, he serves as Aaron's anchor. He gently encourages Aaron to reach out again to Sophia's mother, not with demands, but with humility. Mark reminds him that healing is often a long journey, but a single conversation can sometimes open a door that has been closed for far too long. Ari learns more about Gabby's painful past and understands her mother in a new way. Before Ari heads out of town for Thanksgiving with her friends, she stops by to speak with Gabby, a conversation that quickly becomes more emotional than either expects. Ari is still furious with Sophia. The betrayal and pain she feels are deep and raw. She cannot understand how someone she cared about so much could have made such destructive choices. But Gabby surprises her by responding not with anger, but with compassion. She explains that she once carried similar pain and made choices that she deeply regrets. As a teenage mother, she was overwhelmed, frightened, and desperate for stability. Gabby begins recounting one of the most painful chapters of her life, the period when she agreed to marry Nick Fallon. She had convinced herself it was the right decision for Ari, that giving Ari a traditional family was the only way to make up for her own mistakes. But her voice breaks as she recalls the truth. Nick didn't want to be a partner. He wanted to replace Ari's father entirely. Gabby admits that she felt trapped, and it was Chad who ultimately rescued her from a future built on fear, guilt, and manipulation. This memory softens Ari. She begins to understand that Sophia, pregnant, isolated, and terrified, might be repeating patterns that run painfully deep in young mothers who feel alone. In one of the most touching moments of the episode, Gabby reaches out and gently holds Ari's hand, telling her that forgiveness does not excuse actions, but it can help heal the person carrying the hurt. Rachel's reckless actions put Sarah in serious danger. As the emotional conversations unfold across Salem, another crisis quietly brews. Rachel, in a moment of childish impulsiveness mixed with resentment and mischief, decides to interfere with Sarah's food. She tampers with Sarah's ice cream, and because Sarah has a severe allergy, this becomes a dangerous, life-threatening situation almost immediately. When Sarah takes a bite, she senses something is wrong. Within moments, her breath becomes tight, her throat begins to swell, and panic spreads across the room. It becomes clear that this was not a simple accident. Rachel, horrified by the consequences of her own actions, freezes. Her eyes widen, and she struggles to understand the gravity of what she has done. Even though the crisis is managed quickly, the emotional aftermath will linger. For Sarah, the incident triggers memories of past medical scares and difficult moments she has fought hard to move beyond. For Rachel, it is a frightening lesson that actions, even impulsive ones, can have devastating consequences. Kayla demands answers, and attention turns to EJ's lab. Meanwhile, Kayla Brady, ever the dedicated doctor, grows increasingly suspicious of the DiMera lab after hearing whispers about Marlena's diagnosis possibly being mishandled. She decides it is time for answers. Kayla arrives at the DiMera mansion and firmly requests a full tour of EJ's laboratory facilities. Her tone is polite but resolute. She wants transparency, proper records, and proof that the lab is operating ethically. EJ hesitates, a delay that only strengthens Kayla's suspicions. His reluctance raises new questions. What exactly is happening inside that lab? Why has the staff been reduced? And has EJ allowed DiMera experiments to resume without proper oversight? As Kayla presses him, EJ becomes visibly uncomfortable. The tension is palpable, setting the stage for discoveries that could change the lives of several Salem residents in the weeks ahead. What comes next? This episode brought together many threads: grief, guilt, danger, suspicion, and the complicated love that holds families together even in their darkest hours. With Thanksgiving approaching, Salem's residents are confronted not only with their past mistakes, but also with choices that will determine their futures. From Susan's growing intuition to Kayla's investigation, from Ari's awakening empathy to Aaron's unresolved heartbreak, and from Rachel's careless mistake to Sarah's terrifying ordeal, every storyline is inching toward a major turning point. If today's events are any indication, Salem is heading into a holiday week filled with revelations, confrontations, and long overdue healing. Would you like a title, thumbnail text, or summary for this episode as well?